So at the moment I arrived in Saudi Arabia, I think my first day of work, I had heard about Al-Hilal and the soccer scene here in Saudi Arabia and just how vibrant it is and how passionate the fans are. So when they had this historic moment, we wanted to get involved and cheer for them and recognize the accomplishment while also participating.
Hello and welcome to the Mayman Show. As usual, we are coming to you from our studios in Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And today we have with us a U.S. diplomat who has hit the online community, or should I say the football online community, by storm. We have Samantha BonenClark. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. And Samantha, you made a video for Al-Hilal, which is a club here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a very famous one. So tell us a little bit about the video you made and what made you want to do it.
So the video had a couple different, came from a couple different places. So first, Al-Hilal, they had a bit of a historic moment when they qualified for the final in the FIFA Club World Cup, which I learned they'd only ever done one other time, early 2000s. So this was, they had only qualified for the cup one other time, and this time they qualified for the final. So that was pretty historic. It was a big deal. And then also a couple members of my team at work, they love Al-Hilal. So at the moment I arrived in Saudi Arabia, I think my first day of work, I had heard about Al-Hilal and the soccer scene here in Saudi Arabia and just how vibrant it is and how passionate the fans are. So when they had this historic moment, we wanted to get involved and cheer for them and recognize the accomplishment while also participating.
All right. And since your colleagues from work introduced you to the Saudi football scene, do you follow Saudi soccer?
Well, I definitely do now, a little bit more for sure. Yes. I would say that I have followed soccer or been involved in soccer for most of my life in some way. I played when I was really young. It's actually very common for young girls in the United States to play soccer. It's often one of the first sports that they do. And then it kind of developed from there. So I played other sports, but my mom played soccer, for example. So when I was 10, 11 years old, we'd go to my mom's soccer games. And then I have two sisters that continued to play in high school and then one who played in college. So it's always kind of been there. I know the rules. I've been to many, many, many games, played in some myself, got to go to a couple of big games. I saw the U.S. women play France in Brazil for the Olympics. In 2016 was probably my first really big game. Yeah. But then, of course, I got to Saudi Arabia, and then I was able to go to the World Cup last year, which I think was maybe the crown jewel of my soccer experience to date. I went for one of the U.S. games, but then I also got to see Saudi Arabia play Mexico in the fan zone area, which was so much fun. I had a Saudi jersey and made many, many Saudi friends.
Okay, and what was it like, attending the World Cup and, the first World Cup in the GCC region?
It was a lot of fun. I was very lucky to go with a friend who had planned it very, very well. So she really helped facilitate the experience for me, but just the energy going into the stands and feeling the excitement and just the pride of everyone who was participating. I stayed for, I want to say it was 4 days. And it was fun to go to Qatar to see Doha a little bit. I went jet skiing, which was pretty fun. Not something I thought I would be doing a lot of when I moved to Saudi Arabia. But it was a wonderful experience. So definitely a highlight.
All right. And, when I talked to you earlier before we started recording, you're into sports. Yeah. So what kind of sports are you into?
Man, tough question. Lots of sports. So there's sports that I play, and then there's sports that I watch, and then there's kind of a mixture. Okay. So we talked about soccer a bit, but I myself was actually a swimmer growing up. I swam for 17 years in college. But then when I stopped, I was kind of looking around for something else, and I got into martial arts as well. All right. So I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a grappling sport. No striking, so no hitting, but it's pretty intense, very self-defense based. And it's actually been an amazing vehicle as I've kind of grown up and started my career and moved around the world because I meet people everywhere that I go, including here in Riyadh.
Okay.
I've found a place to train, and I've met some wonderful women who are passionate, sports I think are wonderful, and this sport in particular, because you meet people when you participate in them that you never otherwise would have met.
Okay.
And that has definitely been my experience. I think I've done jiu-jitsu now in 5 different countries.
Okay.
Most recent of which is Saudi Arabia.
All right. And since, you moving to Saudi, have you found it basically the same to, if you want to participate in any sporting activities, like if you want to swim, you want to walk, you want to run, you want to do jiu-jitsu, has that, like, moving here hindered the process in any way?
I think a move, regardless of where you're moving to, what changes your process. You arrive in a new place and you have to find your bearings.
Okay.
So things did change a little bit for me when I moved here. I moved from Washington, D.C., and before that I was in Brazil.
Okay.
So the heat, for example, I arrived in August, and so we had to take into account what we were doing outside versus inside. Not too tough of an adjustment. You just get up a little earlier and go inside a little earlier. But every new place that I've moved for jiu-jitsu in particular, it's kind of the same. You go to a couple different gyms, you meet people, you get a lot of references. You know somebody who knows somebody. Or it's location based. The gym I go to now is walking distance from my house. So when I got here, I didn't have a car, and that's the one I went to.
Right.
And people were friendly, and the ladies wanted to train, and there was an energy there that I liked, so I stayed.
All right. So aside from, the weather conditions, you didn't find anything different, like facilities are there, the level of participation, of course, varies from country to country, but you found a lot of sports enthusiasts in the country?
Definitely sports enthusiasts. I think so the facilities are the same. This is the first time that I've trained in a gender segregated environment for jiu-jitsu, which in a way has been interesting because jiu-jitsu is a very male dominated sport. So even in the United States, like the very first gym I ever trained in, I think I was one of 2 women.
Okay.
And so I was constantly looking for a female community that I could participate in, that I could find women. Because it's different when you're training, especially in a self-defense sport where there's a lot of strength and size, height and weight are really important. Yeah. So training with men versus training with women, you get to test your skills differently. So when I train with women, it's very communal. Like everyone's very supportive, but it's also very competitive because you don't have the excuse of, I was training with a guy, so you didn't really win. No excuse. So it's very competitive.
All right. And, since you've been here, so let's recap some of the sporting events that have happened in Saudi. So we've just recently, had a big boxing match with the main event of Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. We've had the Saudi Cup. There's a plethora of more events that have happened in Saudi. It's very hard to keep up with what's going on here. So what's your thoughts, as someone who follows sports and been around the world to, basically partake in sporting activities and see some, events? What's your thoughts about the kingdom's ascension to becoming a global sports hub?
Well, lots of things, lots of details in there. I think that participation in sports, whether at a young age level for children, for people who just have hobbies, or all the way up to the professional level to reaching the international level, is an exciting prospect here in the kingdom and in the United States and everywhere. For me, it's been interesting to see. I have to give a shout out because I know that I believe Saudi's first professional female fighter had her first fight last night.
Yeah. It was her the first international.
International. Okay, so her first international competition, and she won.
Yes.
Ragad, right?
Ragad al-Naimi.
Yes. So congratulations to her. What an accomplishment.
Okay.
But for this, and you mentioned the Saudi Cup as well. We're just hitting all the sports.
Yeah, we're gonna tick all the boxes.
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, I actually do know a bit about the Saudi Cup and horse racing. That's another sport that I was involved in a bit tangentially through my my family. So my father is a racehorse veterinarian.
Okay.
So racehorsing has been a part of my life for, since before I was even born. Um, this was my first time. I did go to the Saudi Cup. I was there for both days. And I learned so much in a short period of time. Of course, it's famous as being the richest race in the world. The big race on Saturday night is $20 million purse. Just for reference, the Kentucky Derby is $3 million. So it's definitely for reference, it's very impressive. But I was struck by it is becoming international. There were 15 different countries plus Saudi Arabia that were represented in the 2 days of racing. There were a number of other events like the International Jockey Challenge, which was actually something I had never heard of before. So most horse races, you think that the horses are racing each other. Yes. But the International Jockey Challenge, which took place on Friday, the first day of the event, was actually the jockeys competing against each other. So the jockeys, there's 7 female jockeys and then 5 male jockeys international and I believe 2 local that competed in 4 races against each other for a big purse, a big prize at the end. And I have to be proud. The U.S. jockey won, Luis Saez. He's a very impressive athlete, but really they all are.
Yeah.
So I think the international element is definitely there. Even just the end result. So the big race, the Saudi Cup.
Yeah.
This was the 4th year that it's been run, and now 4 different countries have won the big race. I think it was, U.S., UK, Saudi, and now Japan.
Not Japan, yes. Japan had a quite stellar performance the last Saudi Cup, right?
Yeah, they had an amazing. It was just everyone brought their A game.
Yes.
So good races all around.
And I remember meeting you at Saudi Cup, and just wanted to show how small the world is when it comes to sports. I remember you were telling me that you and your family basically knew some people who were participating in Saudi Cup. So if you can just give us a little example how small the international sports community is.
Yes, it is a small world. So the U.S. team sent over, there were 7 different horses that came over from the United States that made the trip. And one of the teams, Ganite's team, sent over one of their training assistants, and she grew up, or her grandmother's house was right next to the barn that was nearby where I learned how to ride horses and where I lived growing up.
Okay.
So we came from very similar places, and it was very nice to meet her, and also to get a window into what it's like coming over to Saudi Arabia from the United States, but with horses, like traveling that far. And how do horses ride on planes? Obviously they don't sit in.
I want to know. Someone should do a documentary about that, right?
Oh, I know. It'd be so interesting.
Transport a horse from one country to another,
or what the rules are, the quarantine when they arrive. How long do they have to? There were many rules, of course, but all went well. It was a great event. I was happy to go, and we'll look forward to going again for sure.
All right, let's get back to Al-Hilal for a little bit. Where from your video, you have been dubbed Sam Al-Hilaliah.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you feel to have that moniker given to you?
Oh well, and it's been an interesting experience being brought in. I think that when arriving in a new place like I have, and wanting to learn more about the local sports or what people where you live are interested in, a really great way to do it is to have a team, is to have someone to cheer for. And so Sam Al-Hilaliah was kind of born in order to be more involved in the sports environment here in Saudi Arabia.
All right. So instead of your colleagues, aside from your colleagues telling you about, the soccer scene and everything, so what drew you to Al-Hilal as a club in general?
Well, its reputation. I have to say my favorite color is blue, so that didn't hurt at all.
Okay.
But I think the way a lot of people come into having a favorite team or a favorite player of some kind, it was your friends and the people that you spend time with. That's who they were cheering for.
Okay.
So there's especially 1 or 2 people in my office who are huge fans of Al-Hilal.
Okay.
And they were more than happy to, when I was looking for a team to support, to offer some suggestions.
Okay.
And then I think it coincided with Al-Hilal just performing really well I know the other teams perform well too. Like I want to recognize like Al-Nasr, their women's team won the championship, which is also really exciting. But they had this stellar performance that got them all the way to the final in the Club World Cup against Real Madrid, which is just like raising that international level even more.
Yeah.
And then I had seen actually, so I believe it was 8 of the players that played for Saudi in the World Cup in Qatar were also playing for Al-Hilal in the Club World Cup. So in this tournament. So it was fun to see the overlap and just learn more about the life of the players and that they go back and forth between tournaments like that. I know I believe they just had a big victory yesterday as well in the Asia Cup.
Right.
So.
And, so aside from just supporting the club, like you've taken part of this support, back home to your family. Yeah. So how did you do that, by the way? Like, I know the story, but I want you to tell our audience watching what the story is.
Yes. So my favorite part of this video, of this short video, is actually, so we went to the Al-Hilal store, which I had never been to before.
Yeah.
Everyone there was very nice and very accommodating. And as I was walking through for the first time, I saw they have, of course, the different jerseys and different colors, and then they have the little kids section. And so I'm an identical twin, and my sister has a son who is 1.5 years old. He's my nephew. And I just went right forward because my first thought was to pick out a jersey for him because how cute would that be? And that little clip ended up in the video. And he's pretty adorable. I think he recently started walking and dribbling a soccer ball, or at least a big ball of some kind.
So he's already an athlete.
He's already a fan. He's an athlete.
Yeah.
He's excited. He's into it.
Is he attached to the jersey?
To the blue jersey? Not yet. But we'll see.
Let him play with the ball a little bit and dribble in. I think he'll establish some sort of connection to it.
Yeah.
So, when did you move to Saudi Arabia exactly?
So I moved about 6 months ago. My husband and I arrived end of August.
All right. And so before you moved here, aside from being a U.S. diplomat, like what expectations did you have? About moving here. I mean, I know, usually as a diplomat, you're much more well-versed about what a country and its culture is, but like just from, I guess, a personal perspective, what were your expectations coming in?
So I prepared. I studied a little bit of Arabic, and I really enjoyed the process of learning about Saudi Arabia, learning about this region. It's not a part of the world that I had spent a lot of time in before. I think I mentioned my last posting was in Brazil,
Completely
but also huge soccer fans.
Yeah.
So cultural overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited. After a lot of preparation, I had heard about the hospitality, about the food, about all the changes happening in Saudi Arabia, and I wanted to see them. I wanted to see it for myself.
All right. And what have you seen and experienced so far?
I think...
Aside from sporting events.
Aside from the sporting events. Well, there's a lot to do in Saudi Arabia now. Like, it's almost tough to keep up with social media and see what the events are. And it's definitely a place that has changed a lot. Even I know people who have been here for 2 years. I've been here for 6 months, and their early experiences might have been different than mine. So it's an exciting place to be.
All right. And what have you experienced from the culture? Like, have you heard Saudi music? You listen to, or have you tried Saudi cuisine or anything?
Yes. I would say of the Saudi specific culture, I've enjoyed, I would say 3 things. I've enjoyed many things, but my top 3 so far. I was never a big dates eater before.
Yeah.
And now I love them. We talk about sports, when you're trying to fuel a workout or going for a run, and you want something before you go, a date is a great way to give yourself energy. And it's regional, so very interesting element of the diet. I had never had a Saudi coffee before.
Yeah.
And I've developed a taste for cardamom. I think it smells great. I like Saudi coffee a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the camels. So I was able to go to the Camel Festival this year, which was a great experience. We talk about horses, but I had very little experience with camels before.
I mean, you've done more in Saudi in the 6 months you've been here than I have, in my entire life. So,
I have a long list. There's many other places I'd love to go.
all right. So, let me tell you an interesting detail about dates. So, did you know that if you 3 dates have the same equivalent of nutrients as one apple?
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
I did know they have a pretty high sugar content.
Yes.
I think it depends on the date. Somewhere between like 10 and 20.
But they're all natural sugars.
Yeah.
And healthy.
Good for you.
Yeah. Have you tried any Saudi food other than, like...
Well, kapsa.
Kapsa.
I've definitely tried kapsa.
Was it restaurant kapsa or someone invited you to their house? Because there's a big difference.
I would say so far, mostly restaurant kapsa.
Yeah.
Although we did have this amazing dish at the Camel Festival, which was just the giant bowl of rice, but it had like 4 or 5 different types of meat in it. It was delicious. And the first meal that I remember sitting down with a lot of different people from different places and eating it together with your hand, like the traditional way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was delicious. My husband still talks about it.
Really?
Yeah, he liked it a lot.
I remember I had a friend who had I let him try Saudi breakfast, which is basically, beans and bread. And, we call it food. But to him, he was like, let's go have that bean dip. Like every time I talk to him, he's like, can we go eat the bean dip? Can we go eat the bean dip? So I can understand. It gets pretty addictive, So, but what do you want to see? Like, for example, you're ticking a lot of boxes while you're here, and you've only been here for 6 months so far. What are you really excited about seeing in Saudi that you haven't seen yet?
Well, so there are a number of places, even close to Riyadh, that I'm interested in seeing, like the Red Sands, for example.
Okay.
Or going out a little further, of course, Al-Hilal is famous. I have a friend who went stargazing there last year. She said it was just unbelievable.
I've been stargazing there.
Yes, although I think desert camping in general, you get some pretty amazing star views. Jeddah, of course. But now my newest one, since we were talking about the Saudi Cup, is actually Taif.
Okay.
I would love to go there because, so a little bit about going back into the racehorses again, but in the United States, racehorses travel around the country. It's seasonal. So they spend the cooler months, they'll spend them in the south, and then when it gets hot, they'll go to the north, and it depends on if they're being sold or if they're training. Like, it all depends. They travel quite a bit. And it turns out that it's similar to that in Saudi Arabia as well. So some of the horses who are Saudi horses who train here in Riyadh during the winter go to places more mountainous, a little bit cooler, like Taif. So I would love to see that. Love to see the mountains and get a little bit of a taste of different culture as well.
All right. I mean, if you want to see mountains, I also recommend you go to Abha. So that's home to Suda Mountain, which is the highest peak in the kingdom, 3,000 meters above sea level. You literally, if you drive up, it's like a 20-minute drive from the city to the mountain, and you'll notice the weather change just from the drive alone.
Do you hike it or drive it?
Well, people hike. Some people, you go cycling as well. I mean, there's various ways to do it, but naturally everybody usually tries to drive there. But I've noticed the trend is changing, where there's people that hike, people cycle. I mean, it's just getting pretty diverse, especially since it's, turning into, like one of the premium tourism destinations for the kingdom, because it's offering something that, you don't see everywhere. It breaks all the stereotypes. Green, cold, 3,000 meters above sea level.
Again, Saudi's full of surprises.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, if you go there, you need to try something called hanif, which is a special way of making lamb and rice. Yeah, so every region.
What's special about it?
It's the way they cook it. So what basically, it's cooked in like a like a pit oven, but what they do is they throw in like leaves and lettuce, and it kind of smokes the meat in a certain way, so it has a very distinct flavor.
I will keep that in mind to give me all your recommendations.
Oh, I mean, you don't want to take recommendations from me with food. I think like I'm just gonna give you a long list, and then you're gonna end up being upset with me because you're just gonna spend all the time eating and not exercising.
I love eating.
All right. So as someone who's traveled the world and being a diplomat, how important do you see cultural dialogue in this day and age?
Well, I think cultural dialogue is obviously, I think it's very important. I myself am a great example. Through elements of culture, whether it's, we've talked a lot about sports, but also entertainment, other film, other elements as well. You can find commonalities, touch points, things that feel familiar to you. So I think for me, obviously, one of the big ones in my life has been sports, whether it's watching them or playing them, being involved in them in some way.
Okay.
And I think they're a great vehicle, whether it's learning from a young age to be a team player or to learn a little bit of discipline or sportsmanship. But as you get older or as you maybe zoom out a little bit more, it's a great vehicle for things like inclusion, for empowerment, for youth and for women. There are many elements that I think you end up finding a lot in common with people when you start talking about culture, because people are proud of their cultures as well, and they like to share them, so it's a great thing to arrive in a place and be curious about the culture and then be received warmly and also to have wonderful explanations and opportunities to experience cultures that are different than yours.
All right. And if you had to give me like one or two examples of, just your experience and how you found some similarities, being American with other cultures, it could be Saudi, it could be, any other place you lived in. What would be like, an example you would say this is a perfect example of what cultural dialogue can do to bridge gaps?
Okay, so I have going back to sports again, but in two of the sports that I have done overseas, one we've talked about, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and one we haven't talked about as much, but I like to surf. Both of them are things that you have to learn. You have to be taught. Like there's a relationship with the teacher, and there's a community involved. But that community doesn't always have to speak the same language. So right now here in Riyadh, some of the jiu-jitsu classes that I go to, not everyone speaks English or is not very strong in English. And I know a little bit of Arabic, but not a lot. But you don't even need the language in order to make the connection, to have something in common, to spend hours with someone when if you were just sitting, kind of randomly met, just say like at a restaurant or an airport or something, you might not have the same interaction. I think it's a great example of what some cultural overlap can do to just create friendships and understanding and wonderful experiences.
All right. And while I have you here, I'm not going to ask you what misconceptions, of like the international media has of this country. I'm going to ask you it in a different way just to get a better perspective. And I think just with what you've been saying, you'd have some great insight about this. Is, like, how do you feel, since in your short time here, like there is an opportunity, to basically have some compelling content with international media outlets, not necessarily news. It could be, entertainment, it could be movies, it could be anything. But, there's obviously, like an untapped opportunity in a narrative since you've been here and you've seen it. Not everyone is projecting what you see to the outside world.
Well, I think that's some of that is already happening. I mean, I saw Fox Sports was at the Saudi Cup, and so I think that there is space for international media, and that they are interested. Okay. I think that they are interested in paying attention. That's what that's what I have seen so far, and there definitely is a lot to see.
All right. So aside from sports, do you feel that like let's say like Neom, for example, has a media sector and they're offering rebates for anyone who wants to film their movies or shows, and they're currently filming series and Neom, and also like in Al-Hilal they filmed the movie Kandahar. So basically like aside from just reporting what's happening into this in Saudi, you know what I mean? Like, where do you see that there is an untapped opportunity just, for Saudi to work with the international media sector or community,
I think there are a lot of people who are interested in being involved in different industries and in different areas. So obviously we've got tourism and entertainment. The Red Sea Film Festival, I think, is a good example as well of just some of the talent that exists, or the drive that exists to showcase what there is and what Saudi Arabia has to offer. I would say it is here and it's thriving, and I don't know that it's untapped. I think it's beginning to be tapped, would be what I would
Let's just say it hasn't reached its full potential.
Yes.
How about that?
Yeah, we'll agree on that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And all right. So while I have here, I wanted to just ask you as well. So when you learned Arabic, did you expect to say did you want to learn Arabic because you felt that it would be like something that you needed to know moving here, or what have you basically noticed aside from, like you said, you meet people who don't speak English fluently, but understand and speak a bit, and some that don't. Have you found communication to be a barrier here?
Well, so I would say I wanted to learn Arabic. I had spent more time. I speak Spanish and Portuguese, and so I was curious of what would I be able to, because the reputation is that Arabic is very difficult to learn. And while I would probably agree with that, I also would say it's a beautiful language, and I really enjoyed my studies and wanted to use it more when I got here. And I would say that people definitely appreciate the effort and the gestures, like even knowing basic phrases and how to, greetings and how to say thank you and goodbye, go a long way. And so I have used it a little bit, but I hope to continue to practice and get a little bit better.
All right. Okay. And before we, wrap up everything, what personal message do you have for our audience, tuning and reading and following the program in Arab News?
Oh, I would say that Saudi Arabia right now is a place that invites participation. We've talked a lot about sports, so I think that's an easy one. But whether it's a hobby or more specifically a sport, I would encourage people to try to get involved, whether adults, kids, women, youth. I think there is, as you said, some potential here, and I would encourage people to participate.
All right. Okay. And I think I can ask you a lot more questions, but we've already taken enough of your time today, and you're very nice to take some time to come here after work. So we'll give you a break.
Oh no, it was my pleasure.
And then maybe we can also pick this up at another time. I just wanted to thank you very much for being with us, and keep making the amazing content you're making, showcasing sports and football, soccer. I mean, the rest of the world's gonna disagree with us by calling it soccer because
Oh, I know, very controversial.
the big debate.
I gotta stick to that one though.
Soccer and football, right? I stick to soccer too myself, so don't worry about it. We can debate this again with everybody later.
I look forward to it.
All right. And that's all the time we have for this episode. And tune in to the Mayman Show on Arab News. See you later.